I'm Barbara Kaufman, Executive Vice President and COO at Newark Regional Business Partnership. I'm delighted to welcome all of you today for a very special program. I am going to talk a little bit about our upcoming programs, but first I want to thank our sponsors of today's program. Kevin, when I was describing the agenda, what I neglected to include is that in a few moments, Andy Palluri from WSP USA will be the person introducing you. So I'll be turning to Andy after my opening comments. We're very grateful to WSP for being the lead sponsor for today, and also to HNTB and VHB for also sponsoring the event. And throughout the year, NJ Advanced Media is our media sponsor. So all of that is very, very important, particularly in this COVID year. The program's coming up next week, our NRBP Nexus guest, that's networking, where all of you have the opportunity to comment and discuss things that are on your mind. Our guest will be Linnea Richardson, and in particular, he'll be speaking about a new angel fund that's oriented to Black and Latino angel investors. So that's going to be on Tuesday. On Wednesday, we're doing profiles of women leading in a crisis. The 5 women leaders come from very different professions, and they'll be speaking about some of the ways in which they have been able to be strong leaders during other crises, but particularly during COVID. Then the following week, we launch our diversity and inclusion mini-series, and we're beginning, it's going to be on racial and economic disparities, and we're beginning with foundational issues. Ryan Haygood from New Jersey Institute of Social Justice will be leading off with that program. On August 18th, our second program will be on law and public safety, and that will also be led with other speakers by Andrew McChristian from New Jersey Institute of Social Justice. On August 5th, we'll be talking about marketing and how you can continue to be successful in a pandemic such as this. And on August 13th, we'll be talking about cybersecurity, certainly an issue that's become even more apparent because of everybody working remotely and some issues that are coming up. Andy Palluri, who I'm going to introduce now, is Vice President and Area Manager for WSP USA in New Jersey. WSP is one of the largest consulting firms in the state, with offices in Newark, Lawrenceville, and Morristown. And before turning to Andy, the last thing I'll mention is that all of you will be muted and you have your cameras off for the duration of the program. There are 2 areas where you can comment, but please place your questions in the questions box, and then Chip and I, when Kevin finishes, Chip and I will ask the questions that are posed in the questions box. The presentation will be available to all of the attendees following the program, so watch for your thank you email, which will contain that presentation as well as a survey about the program. So with that, I am going to shut off my camera until I come back for questions, and say a great thank you and welcome to Andy, who is coming with regrets from Bernie McNeely, who is joining us but was delayed, and so Andy is adeptly filling his role.
Thank you, Barbara. Thank you. I did not realize that we were going to be on the camera, so I'm glad I wore my cleaner shirt and a tie today. Welcome, everybody. The series of these virtual meetings. It's a strange way of getting together, but this is better than not getting together. Today, I'm really privileged and honored to introduce Kevin Corbett, a good friend, a mentor, and a leader in our transportation industry. I just want to reflect back in 2016, I believe I read a newspaper article from New York Times that had a heading that said something along the lines of NJ Transit, a cautionary tale of neglect He talked about how great the golden years of NJ Transit were back in the 90s. The ridership was going up, the trains were running on time, and the faster routes to Manhattan with the double-decker buses and things of that nature. And after almost a decade of not having enough funding, which was the time this article was written, it starts talking about how the decline has started and things have gone really south. And I'm really pleased that even as a candidate, Governor Murphy talked about NJ Transit as a national disgrace, given the fact that it used to be the top of the charts, it's now at the bottom of the charts. When Governor Murphy was elected and appointed Kevin Corbett as the executive director in 2018, just like many of us, we were nervous about the direction NJ Transit is going to go. And after almost 2.5 years, I could tell you that NJ Transit has made a significant change, a transformational change in where it was back in before 2018 versus where it is now. And truly, I got to commend Kevin Corbett for the job he has done, bringing all the true leaders around him, surrounding himself with good people, hardworking people, and making this agency truly, again, a shining light of New Jersey. Just to give you a data point, back before the 2018, the amount of projects that were actually active with NJ Transit were about $600 million, and right now we're up to $4 billion. And also, for the first time in the history of NJ Transit, I believe we have actually a capital plan for 5 years and a strategic plan for the next 10 years or so. There were people who said did not believe in Kevin and NJ Transit. There are people who asked for his resignation, and even COVID did not spare him. But I tell you that Kevin has prevailed, and we're so happy to see Kevin as a president and executive director of NJ Transit and leading the lead agency in the right direction. I don't think you need any further introduction than that for Kevin Corbett. Kevin, thank you very much for everything you do, and please take it away from here.
Great. Thank you, Andy. Yes, I remember, when I first came in back in, as you say, early 2018, and we were talking, the end of 2017 after the election. There were people when I took this job at, say MTA, Friends Over Across the River, Port Authority. I said, what was I crazy? Looking at the difficult situation, and now we certainly have plenty of challenges here still, and a long way to go. But I feel a lot more comfortable now. I'm feeling more sorry for them than the other way around. So things certainly have changed over the last few years. One correction though, Andy, you said 600 million in 2017, and hard money that was 60 million. So right now, and I'll be getting that in a minute, but Portal Bridge, of course, is a big project at 1.8 billion. I think I'll talk to that in a minute. But aside from the other projects that we haven't, that are now that we put out and are either have awarded and are under construction now, or soon will be, they're in the procurement process. That's 2.3 billion. So altogether, we have over $4 billion of capital projects underway or soon to be underway later this year, compared to 60 million, not 600. So what's 540 million amongst friends? But so I'd like to get in. We do have a slide presentation, and Anthony, I'm sure you all can't see Anthony over here. Anthony Greco again. Wish we could all be together, but I certainly would like, before getting into the presentation, again, to thank Andy. Sorry, Bernie can't be here, but and Chip, as always, the partnership, what it means for us. I'll talk to that a bit later, but having responsible advocates who can really do what's right to help from the economic side. A lot of us are in the transportation business, that's our careers, but it's not, at the end of the day, it's not about transportation, it's about the economy, the quality of life. And certainly in Newark, we believe in New Jersey Transit, we're the underpinning for that recovery and for economic growth, and really appreciate the support of NRBP, Chip, and of course Barbara, everything you've done to support us, as well as all the partnership members. I think I will start with sort of New Jersey Transit's response to the COVID pandemic, both the many safety measures we have, the the impact of the pandemic on us, our operations, our finances. But I'd like to focus a fair bit also on the new strategic plan and capital plans, both of which include many projects and initiatives specifically beneficial to Newark. Again, when I came in, the New Jersey Senate did not have a 10-year strategic plan. Most major agencies, major corporations have a strat plan. And then, where the rubber meets the road is having particularly in the transit industries, operating entities have a 5-year capital plan, state of good repair, life cycle costs, the basic kind of businesses. And I'll talk more of that in a minute, but that's been a very exciting rollout that we had last month with the governor that I'll talk to. I think if we go to the next slide, I think just get on some of the COVID stats. I think you can see here, we had, 559 employees tested positive. Very sadly, 13 have died from COVID. Again, that's out of roughly 12,000 employees, including Ray Kenny, the head of our rail division. I would say, though, from the height of where we had 299 on April 27th, I was one of those 299, as I think Andy pointed out. We're down now to 33 employees who currently are positive. The impact, as you all know, regionally and nationally on ridership has been devastating. The lockdown, certainly in New Jersey, people have taken it very seriously, and we saw, that flattening of the curve that the governor worked so hard on, and New Jersey has really been a good example for the rest of the country now, and New York similarly, but it took tremendous toll on people, businesses obviously, including ours. We were down about 95% in those first months. I mean, it was a ghost town. I'd be riding in from Morristown. I maybe me and maybe one or two other people on the platform, versus, say 100 or so. And now, our ridership has gone from that single digit on rail. We're about 80%, below our pre-COVID levels. So we're about 20% of what it used to be. And then bus, we're at about 30%, 70% lower than what we were. But we do see bus rising quicker, and particularly of Newark, we find the the bus routes into New York, Port Authority bus terminal, et cetera, or into Philly and South Jersey, they remain low. A lot of, as businesses are, the major employers there are not back. I think we're anticipating that more, September going into next year. But the intercity bus rail has been up, so that is an interesting trend. I think the next thing is, how do we get ridership? First, how do we make it safe for our employees? I think, at the next slide, is get people, both our employees. It certainly had to be very important that we protect our employees, but also, what do we do to give our riders comfortable and make sure they were safe during the last few months, but also give them confidence for coming back. I think a couple of the things that we did well with our comprehensive emergency management plan here, we call the KEMP, was in February, as we started to see this evolve overseas, we actually activated a COVID task force here at New Jersey Transit before there was a single case in New Jersey. And one of the things we decided at that time was to go make sure we did cleaning protocols, that we cleaned and disinfected all our vehicles and major stations and terminals every 24 hours. I think that gave us a bit of a jump up. We enhanced the cleaning and the frequent customer touch points, stores, all that, and we made sure PPE was provided to all personnel, particularly the frontline employees. And there was a real challenge. Remember that we were competing with hospitals, the scramble, working with FEMA, et cetera, to get that. And of course, that market sort of stabilized, although it's gone back up as the rest of the country. But we made sure we acquired ample supply for the next 6 months plus. The governor came out with the Executive Order 125 with face cover, that as well as a 50% capacity, and Executive Order 165 expanded that to cover stations and platforms. I think one thing that has helped, and I think we saw that in Newark Penn Station as well as Penn Station, New York, was the soft closure at night. So to really have disinfecting and cleaning, and really, I just went over to purchase a gift for somebody right before this lunch break, and Newark Penn looks clean. We have good policing there. We have a great police force, by the way, very good for community outreach, etc. So very proud of them. And the other thing we looked at is best technology. We're working with partners overseas, other major transit agencies, institutes, and particularly close to home. We look at different techniques of what we can do to be better, be at the leading edge. And we're working with Rutgers, as some of you may have seen in the press, about a UV light study for sanitizing our buses with UV light. So those are kind of things we're looking at and working on. And I think when I touched on, I should say, on Executive Order 165, we'd mentioned that also lifted the 50% capacity limit that was in the original 125. And the reason is we're not there yet percentage-wise, but we see certain AM, PM buses, and particularly, and we look at other bus systems around the country that are returning to front door access to the bus. They can collect fares, also prevent people, who want to go on the bus and just ride them like mobile homes. We're not equipped for that. So we see other systems going back to that. We're looking to work with labor to go back to that as well. That 50%, we've really seen that it's all about wearing the face mask, and that is very difficult to take the mask out of mass transit. Look at the impact on our revenue, though. The impact, as is dramatic. Our revenue is to roughly 2.2 billion a year, of which about $1 billion comes out of the fare box. It's easy to do the math if you take 90+% of that out. So in March we did ask the delegation, and with the CARES Act we received $1.4 billion to help get us through. At that time we thought is just sort of a guess of where we'd be going. And now that we have several months under the belt, like other transit systems, we see that it'll be a longer curve. It's not going to bounce back like a V, and that people would be back in September 100%. So we look at a several year phase in of getting back to normal, much less if there's a second wave. We have put in requests for additional 1.2 billion, in line as other major transit agencies, SEPTA, MTA, et cetera. You've seen the similar proportionate requests. So last week I participated in a press conference with the transit agencies from around the country to highlight that call for the federal government to include emergency relief for transit in the next COVID bill. I think the next thing I'd like to just point out is something that's behind the scenes for most people, but that really I think is relatively we've really strengthened and put emphasis on the last few years since I've been here. Is I co-chair the Northeast Corridor Commission that governs the Northeast Corridor, the collaboration between all the transit systems from Boston to Washington, together with Amtrak and the federal government. I co-chair that with the head of the Federal Railway Administration, Ron Vittori. And we have a lot of collaboration, a lot of sharing information there. The governor appointed me to represent New Jersey on the 7-state transportation task force. We have that meeting actually at NICE tonight. We have it, on Wednesday nights, and it's really good collaboration between my counterparts in Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware. And we really compare very openly challenges, how we're dealing with them, how we're facing them, and then also large organizations like APTA. Many of you know is the American Association, really coordinating all the public transportation agencies. And then internationally, the UITP, based in Brussels. I'm the North American representative on their board, and I find that to be a really valuable source of sharing information with my counterparts, and whether it be Paris, London, Berlin, Tokyo, Singapore, et cetera, Australia, and what they're seeing within China, and sharing a lot of information. Some of those calls are 4 in the morning, they're a little rough, but it's really really helps. And the consensus pretty much everywhere, we see different patterns as different countries. Brazil has really not come out of it. You look at what's going on. Austria, New Zealand coming out very well. So you look at what lessons you can share. But the bottom line is it's hard to take the mass out of mass transit, and really have to focus on shared responsibility between the transit agencies, the riding public, and the employers for many of the people who are riding us. And when I say that on the shared responsibility, you see we have a campaign where we're really putting that out, that Anthony and his team have developed. And it's, our responsibility is to make sure we have the cleanest and safest possible system for our customers and employees. We ask that the customers follow DOH guidelines, including face covering requirements, distancing to the maximum extent possible. And, also if you're sick, I mean, the common sense things, hand sanitizing, if you're sick, stay home, etc. Try to work from home if at all possible. And if you have to go to work, to try to spread out so as not to come in at the peak rush hours, be either earlier or later to help spread out the rush hour curves. And for employers, we ask that they allow that flexibility to help allowing employees who can work from home to continue to work from home. But if they can't, or it's suboptimal, offering flexible hours, stagger the work shifts, etc., so as to help balance the load on the transit systems. I think that gives a feel of where we are on that. I think the part of the recovery program that we have out, again, it's on our website. You have the nj.newjerseystransit.com/recovery. It's focused on our 6 core areas of service, cleanliness, distancing, communications, the PPE and public safety, and then screening and testing. And obviously we work with health authorities in that regard too, both for our employees and for our facilities. And again, this all ties in, with the governor's, the road back, which, New Jersey's roadmap for restoring the economic health through public health. I think one of the things, if you look at is, the campaign also within, you'll see it in our facilities and on our vehicles is a very strong visual to just keep reminding people. And we call it Safe NJ as part of that Ride to Recovery education campaign, and it really is to help reinforcing the requirements to wear covering, be cognizant of distancing, etc. And we're keeping the messages simple and direct, and just want to constantly reinforce that. And I would say that I see it, and I'll be curious to hear how others really do see very high participation. Virtually all the trains, light rail. I take the bus over from Broad Street. Virtually everyone has them on. Some people may have them below the nose, but I think New Jersey, everyone having been, at risk in such a tight, densely populated state, really see very good collaboration and obeying, following those directives. I think the next slide I'd like now to sort of get back to what I touched on in the beginning was, our 10-year strategic plan and 5-year capital plan. And we talk about recovery, as I said, it's not, transportation for transportation side. It's also, about the economic recovery. And I think both the strat plan and the capital plan play into that. I think many of you I know are aware on June 8th, was able to join the governor and unveil that 10-year strategic plan, and at the same time our new 5-year capital plan. And I think these plans certainly build on the progress we've made. We, when I first came in, I said we need to get a baseline assessment, run it as a proper business, and be able to get a vision for that one for our employees, for the organization, and for the public, the riding public, but also for those who who fund us, and legislator, for the business community to know, hey, it's not that there's inherently people in New Jersey Transit are not competent. In fact, it's quite the opposite. But they have to have resources, and I think the strat plan really helped get that vision. I would point out that these documents are living documents. They're not just sort of check the box and they're done. We'll continue to refine them moving forward. And the same thing with the capital plan. I'll get into a little more detail now on both of those. I think the next slide, we get to the strat plan. The major core vision for our organization. It certainly, people say why in the middle of the pandemic did you come out with it? Well, one, we were supposed to roll it out in February, but I would, argue, that you need to have a vision. Whether it be an economic downturn like the Great Recession, whether it be a 9/11, whether it be a Hurricane Sandy with a pandemic, you're always going to have these ups and downs, and in the economy, certainly in the transportation world, and you need to have a vision of how you can be flexible, but where you can stick to that, so you know where you're going and what are the basic metrics, key performance metrics that you need to be judged by. Certainly encourage feedback, and we look forward to, to any input as we go forward into the coming years. I think one of the things that I mentioned there, the 5 overarching goals are the safety, you see down there, safety and reliability, the customer experience. Again, the governor is always the one to tell me, Kevin, different projects or investments, these are great, but what does it mean to me if I'm standing, at Middletown on a platform, or I'm at a bus stop? What does this mean to me as a rider? And that's something we cannot lose sight of. Certainly stronger and fair economy, even when we were down to just 5-6% ridership. You look at the people who needed us, and we're actually coming up to, we talked to them, they were like, thank God you guys are running. They were usually the lower end of the socioeconomic spectrum, majority of them, and we are really the backbone for, as we recover and for the future of the state, to be able to have people access to jobs, access to education, healthcare, et cetera. And we are, play a key role in that. And then building a more sustainable future, which for all those who went through Sandy, I think that's pretty obvious. And then internally, as well as to the public, but really being accountable, but not so accountable as to be so defensive that you feel frozen. We also have to be able to be, take punches and criticism. It comes with a job, but we need to be trying to be innovative and inclusive. We need to be able to, bring in as many resources, many people, new ideas, in all aspects for our organization, and that certainly reflects the state and reflects it well. The next slide, I think, certainly for Newark is, some of the things. What's the impact? A lot of the generalities. What does it mean for Newark? I think particularly if you look at projects in our strat plan, things that play into that. Some which are currently underway in Newark. I begin saying we're reimagining, redesigning our bus network, particularly those routes in Newark, is going to be a major focus. We just put that from the board's approval for the funding for that. And if you look at the economy, a lot of the bus routes that we have, frankly, are the same ones from the old trolley routes that go back to the public service, a whole different era. Really look to see how can we help meet demand, improve the service quality, but better aligning that service with the needs and the shifts in the market and the economy of Newark. So as I said last week, the board approved a $600,000 contract to one of the country's premier transportation management firms to help us with this redesign effort. And I would say, a system that really can help be the backbone for Newark, and which really ties in to the next slide is our, new bus and electric bus pilots. Certainly under that plan of safety and reliability, and high quality customer experience, we have added, and you may have noticed them out in the streets, 119 new cruiser buses have been delivered, and 85 new articulated buses are joining our fleet this year. Last year, USDOT, we've actually had a very good relationship. I really worked on that last few years, both with Amtrak and the FRA and FTA, Federal Transit Administration, and they awarded us a $17 million grant to buy an additional 25 new articulated buses, which is the first expansion. Usually our new buses are replacing outdated old buses. This is now really letting us to help bring down the average age of our fleet, which has a whole batch of virtues, but also to actually expand, add additional capacity for the first time. So in that same line, we're looking at electric bus pilot in Camden. Next year, we'll be going to our board in September, where we've worked together with PSE&G to look in line with the governor's energy master plan of how we bring the future is in electric buses. There we're going to start it with test pilot on a select route, 8 electric buses. And the thing is, it's not like buying going out and say, well, we have, a couple of thousand buses. It's not like you go buy a couple thousand toasters and plug them into the wall. The issue is less the actual vehicle. There's a whole pros and cons in different types of vehicles that are in the market and where they are in evolution, but it's really the electric infrastructure to be able to do that charging. And the pilot we're starting in Camden is going to be followed immediately after with a pilot project here in Newark with the routes being selected. So we're very excited what that means, both from the environmental justice issues, a health perspective, and feel that this is will be a big plus for Newark. I think Newark, the light rail, the Broad Street extension, we certainly I know that was something that a number of your members on particularly with real estate interest, highlighted where we have increased the weekday peak period to have allow trains to operate every 10 minutes. I gotta say selfishly, not that that was the reason, but I get off at Broad Street and to come over to our headquarters by Penn Station. If you missed one by a minute, it was just as quick to walk as it would be to wait for the next one, or to wait till you got a 72 or 78 bus. And for people who aren't regular bus riders, aren't regular commuters like that, the unpredictability. So that every 10-minute headway certainly has made. We've seen the ridership coming up, significantly on that, and that's even in this post-COVID, we see it coming back up. So that we feel was a popular move. And I'd say the next slide here, the strategic plan deliverables. Goals, obviously on-time performance is important, although I always like to throw a caution there. Metro North, which was really known for being sort of the benchmark on-time performance, became overly focused on that to the point of not putting enough time, blocking enough time for the necessary maintenance during the day or over the weekends, and that was seen as really what led then to several very bad years and horrible accidents in Metro North. So you always have to balance on-time performance, any of these metrics, not to be so consumed with one that you take your eye off the others, and particularly safety, and making sure time is allotted for the maintenance. But increasing service on the most congested bus routes, we certainly have seen that, and see Newark picking up, Hoboken, Jersey City, and we've really looked at by adding more buses. With the addition, we now have 700 more bus drivers in my team. We've hired 700 plus, trained them, and that has really allowed us to be able to do that expansion and increase the service as well, and less canceled bus trips. Fleet replacement, I touched on that, but again, both with rail and buses to bring the average. Just think of the old American cars you see in a Havana. We are running 50-year-old engines that were, go back to, before New Jersey Transit was even created. So we're working hard on bringing the fleet, both on the rail and bus side, down. And then anybody who's been to our stations, a lot of them, clearly have not had the investment even before they became New Jersey Transit from the historic railroads that were cutting their capital costs as they were heading into bankruptcy. So we have ambitious plans for what we have to do to rehab stations, including improving accessibility, ADA compliance. It's a complex issue. You have a historic station, and what the ADA requirements are now, you really have to redo the whole station. We're not able to do, by law, we're not able to do those just part of the station. It has to be comprehensive. So those were deliverables in the strat plan that were key. Again, you can check out our website on the strat plan at njtplans.com, and you can download it in the entirety, and we'd welcome your feedback if you do. The next slide is a 5-year capital plan. I think it's important, and those in the industry know it, but have an unconstrained plan. We looked at primarily the state of good repair. We were so far behind, and just my heart really bled for a lot of the people here when I first got in here. It was like the transit Hunger Games. Everyone's fighting over crumbs, just trying to keep the Band-Aids and the duct tape going. And you really, was living year by year based on what the state would give you, and then you'd make the best of what they gave you. It's like, that may be the way you have to live, but you need to, I feel very strong, I need to be out there to the public, your chance of constantly being bashed, say, this is what, you want to have a first-class system, yeah, we can get it, but it's going to cost money. I mean, we'll make sure the money you give us is spent wisely and we deliver on that. That's, hold us accountable there. But don't kid yourself that that you're going to get a phenomenal system if you don't invest in it. And so we looked at what did it take. We did a baseline assessment, took a good 2 years, which was a lot of work in 2 years, to go through all our facilities, all our equipment, our yards, our bus depots, and say, okay, this is what it takes. This is the current condition they are. Well, how many years do they have left, or what needs to be done, electric work or foundational work, and just say this is what we've got. And it's a $17 billion 5-year plan. It would be revolving plans, so every year gets updated as projects come off, new ones come in, the next year out. And right now we get about $1 billion of federal formula funds and $1 billion from the state. We feel fairly confident that for the next few years, the money that is committed from the state with the toll increase that went up, we're going to be getting a portion of that from Turnpike Authority, and we'll see what happens with gas tax revenues, but that, as we see traffic coming back. But for this year and going into next year, our capital funding is actually secure. And the interesting thing is a lot of the capital projects we have were actually Sandy projects that had not moved forward for a variety of reasons. We were, New Jersey Transit, prior administration was war at Amtrak, so Amtrak wasn't letting major projects move ahead on the Northeast corridor. So, but still, even with all that we do have moving this year and into next year, we do have about $1 billion gap, and that really gets into advocacy, and we can talk more about that, maybe some questions on it. But the 3 document sets, you have the executive summary, but I think the capital project sheets for any of those who are interested to dive in, see what the depth of work that went into by Eric DeLeo, Eric Schaefer, and their team. Really, I think is impressive work in putting such a plan together in a relatively short time. And then the reason we have the unconstrained financial summary is, okay, this is what any one of these projects, if you don't fund them or you take a 5-year capital plan and stretch it out to 6 or 7, these projects won't get done. And here's the impact of that. So I think that was, is a valuable tool. I think looking at the focusing on Newark region projects, certainly Newark Penn Station, working with Amtrak on that for our different split responsibilities. But how do we make it really a jewel? I know the mayor wants that. Talking to a lot of your members, Chip, we've talked about it a number of times. Is the rehab modernization, and we have Platform D, for example. It's not sexy, but we got 26 million funding. We had a good relationship with our FRA. They gave us a significant grant just a few months ago. The Newark Light Rail Station modernization, we have 130 million targeted for that. Most of that unfunded, but I think it really a lot of those are don't have elevator access or don't have full ADA compliance and need work to be upgraded as far as some of the general facilities as well there. And Newark Drawbridge, up by Broad Street, we want to look to replace that and have a, it's like most bridges that are 100+ years old, particularly if we look at the demands of the growth along the M&E, to be replaced out with a modern bridge that would allow, more tracks to go across, be able to increase our throughput, and, be complementary to our station on Broad Street. And I would say, looking at those are just a couple of the projects, but I'd say altogether it's nearly $1 billion in construction projects in the Newark region alone out of that whole plan. So again, we can, glad to talk more about any specific projects. One that really we're very proud of. People, told me I must be smoking rope when I came in with all the headaches we had on arrival. I said, no, we have to advance, the Northeast corridor. It's the lifeline of the region and of the state. And the politics around Gateway, which we certainly strongly support, about the need for new tunnel expansion in New York Penn Station, working closely with Amtrak and New York on that. But the politics of that were with Gateway Development Corp. So, well, while that gets sorted out, let's really focus on Portal North Bridge. Working, we are the project sponsor. It was 100% design, and working behind the scenes, I felt it wasn't necessarily productive to when you're asking somebody for $800 million, just stick a fork in their eye. They said our financial plan was not adequate. They said our technical plan was not good enough. So we went back, took them at their word, redid both, worked very closely with the staff at FTA, and resubmitted, and ultimately we got the medium-high rating that was necessary, and that allowed us to go into enter engineering. And I think many of you saw, Governor Murphy had out at Bedminster had dinner with Tammy, with the president, and after the dinner he tweeted out that they talked about a lot of recovery things, including Portal Bridge, and that the president supported Portal Bridge. So a week later, we got the official entry into engineering and a commitment of nearly $800 million. So we're working very closely with the FTA, I'd say feverishly on both sides, with really good faith and cooperation. So that is, we're very excited that will be coming out. We expect to have that out to bid later this fall. Again, that it's about $3 billion in economic output, according to Rutgers Kate Center, and it's about 7,900 direct jobs with a total of 15,000 FTE job years, with the induced multiplier effect from that of a $1.8 billion project. Obviously, a lot of those jobs will be reaching out, will be employing people in the Newark area. So, we see this as really a significant step in moving on to, ultimately to the tunnel and the expansion into New York. And I would also have to say I was really proud in working with FTA that Secretary of Transportation, U.S. Secretary of Transportation Elaine Chao, before her testimony in the U.S. Senate, praised the quality of our Portal North submission and New Jersey Transit's collaborative approach, and New Jersey's collaborative approach in general, to getting this project across the finish line. In that connection, also, Secretary Chao mentioned, and it's something that has not gotten as much attention, but it is very important for Newark and the immediate region, is Sawtooth Bridge. It's that if you see the PowerPoint, it looks like a sawtooth, where the tracks from the M&E come into the northeast quarter. Back when there were two competing railroads and they merged in at that point. Since it's not over water, people tend not to think of it as a bridge in the conventional sense, but very complex set of infrastructure, approximately $1 billion, and working very closely with New Jersey Transit. We look forward to moving that project. The FRA released the EA, and we have a green light to move ahead to the next phase, and we're looking to follow up on that closely with the FTA and our partners at Amtrak. This allows the M&E again, this bridge was built in 1907 and has limitations on speed and access for our trains. So again, it'll be a significant improvement and help with our capacity issues on the M&E line, which is the line that, go through Newark Broad Street. So I think if we look at the overall capital progress, as I said, 2017, we only had about 60 million, Eddie, in hard money contracts. We now have 2.3 billion, not including Portal. That's more than 4 billion in construction that we, for projects we desperately need to improve the reliability of transit, but also the impact of that. As I say, Portal is 7,900 direct jobs. That's 1.8. If you use sort of simple math, more than double that. You're talking, 20 plus, 22,000 direct jobs, and that's and then the multiplier, of the other correlated jobs. It's going to be a real significant impact on New Jersey's economic recovery, which is obviously very important in light of unemployment and the challenges the state budget faces going forward. Again, most of this is federal money too, which is really leveraging our state dollars, just like in the private sector. OPM, other people's money, certainly getting leveraging our precious state transportation trust fund dollars to be able to maximize this construction something we're very happy to be looking forward. And I know Eric and his team are full out. And I would also say that it's really a good time looking at the MTA and Port Authority as they pull back, that this is really a good time to be going to market. Companies are hungry in our bids that we see coming in the last few months. We kept working and doing construction work through the pandemic, as well as outside, and it was people were following had the labor and the material. We even gave notices to proceed, and we've seen that in a number of projects that have been moving over the last few months. Our team there is extremely busy right now. Again, as an economic engine, if you look at the Rutgers Kate estimated the total plan, 55 billion of economic output within the state, 15 billion of earnings for end-of-day employees, and a total of over the 5 years of 245,000 FTE job years. It is something that we desperately need as a transportation agency, but it also has a big impact on the economy. So I think that pretty much touches that. I know it's certainly interesting, although I don't know why Anthony put the Aberdeen Mattawan, great example, but as a picture. But seriously, the real estate TOD, it's interesting from an economic development real estate perspective. New Jersey does not have economic eminent domain, such as New York has for doing projects. People say Hudson Yard or Atlantic Yards, a lot of their projects that they've moved in that gets funding. We do not have value capture in New Jersey, where New Jersey Transit people make a lot of money off us by our service, but we're not able to we facilitate that development. We do not get something back, which other agencies around, and that's a trend in transportation. So that value capture is certainly a part of it. But I think if we look at some of those TOD projects, with Aberdeen Mattawan, I was teasing Anthony, but that is one that really is going ahead, where we worked with qualified developing partners, and where there's financial benefit for us, but also is obviously of interest, even with our getting our share, that there's still enough for the developers really to go ahead and benefit from the mutual benefit that we get from that. They own the 31st Street on the Hudson Bergen Light Rail development, Somerville Station. A lot of us saw that relatively recently. We concluded that deal which is going ahead with developing right across the street from our station in Somerville. So these are exciting, and there are others that we're looking at at Hamilton Metro Park, Liberty State Park, and elsewhere through the system, and certainly want to work with as we have been with a number of your members on specific projects in Newark to see how we can facilitate that growth and value there as well. I think that value capture, I touched on it again, is where we can show that we do. It's obviously since it's not a statewide program, a lot of our negotiations do go community by community as a home rule state. But I think if you look at what Midtown Direct did when that connected Manhattan, to Morrison, Essex, property values, particularly those within a half mile or a mile of our stations, we are working and would welcome your input and support for getting some kind of mechanism. So the legislature is looking at that, and we certainly are supporting that. I think I mentioned a couple of examples where we've seen elsewhere that it has paid off for both the development community, the economy of the host municipality, as well as the transit agency. I think the last one then, I know I leave time for questions, is we need your support. I think we have a compelling case. I think we're proven we really have turned around, and we're well on the way. Still a long way to go, but a lot to do. But I think we have a very good team here. We're trying to institutionalize best practices, but we're competing with healthcare, competing education. It's obviously going to be very tough budget year for probably the next couple of years for the state. So we really need to have people advocating who understand the importance of the need to have a reliable transit system, as we bounce back, and so not to slide back from the ground that we've gained the last few years, the hard fought ground that we've gotten to getting transit to where it's now positioned, start really rebounding. We need, please tell your state legislators, your rep in Congress, anybody, Senator Booker, Senator Menendez, et cetera, to really help get the word out that we need to keep New Jersey Transit and the state's economy, firing on all cylinders. So with that, any questions? Again, all this is on our website, and really would appreciate your support. And then I guess Chip, any questions?
Thanks, Kevin. Thanks for sharing all that news with us. There's certainly a lot on your plate, and we don't have too many questions in the question box, and I know that you have a hard stop at 3 o'clock. So just one or two quick things. I know part of you mentioned electric vehicles, electric buses, and the governor's master plan, and a lot of people are very anxious to see those buses. But as I understand it, they're not always the most reliable things that have ever been made. So maybe you could touch on that and why that plays a role and how quickly you're looking to roll them out.
Yeah, thanks, Chip. Great question. As I sort of alluded that, I think about it, it's now we have over 2,000 buses, we're one of the largest bus operators in the country. But for a lot of people, simply, they think it's like maybe they see, a Tesla vehicle or something. Oh, well, why don't you just go out, buy 2,000 new buses and plug them in? And the issue isn't the bus, and there's a lot of issue as the technology evolves. Think of, the Wright brothers were the first airplane, and where it went from, 1911 to 1931, in 20-year period. There's a lot of experimentation and evolution going on in the actual vehicles themselves. And I would give, there are some cautionary tales. I think if you look at Albuquerque, New Mexico, very enthusiastically, we're going to go all in on electric buses, and they chose a Chinese company that very strong in Shenzhen, but the system failed miserably because of that unreliability and a bunch of other factors. Indianapolis, the same thing. Indigo, they decided to do a major route, EV bus only, and they had the same problem. And it caused major problems, economic problems. It was seen as a failure. It turned people against electric buses. So I think you really have to do a really well thought out approach. Walk before you run, do the testing, the protocols, make sure you really understand it. It's a very different kind of technology, different operation impacts that you allude to. And the lesson we've seen, Mike Kilcoyne, who oversees our bus ops, Los Angeles has a very ambitious program. I know Phil Washington, who's my counterpart there. I asked Phil, to share, and he has a good team there. We sent Mike and a couple of the key people out to look to see what they were doing. Also, as I mentioned, that UITP, the international group we plug in, Paris is, no pun on plug, and the Paris is going through that. Actually, Manchester, England has a very ambitious program. So we're sharing lessons learned so that we don't make those same mistakes and hopefully sort of leapfrog on some of those. So the two pilots we're starting with, but the main thing we see is not so much about the vehicles, it's about the infrastructure and the electric loads that would take, both the charging overnight, plus, keeping the vehicles charged, the number of the batteries, the weights, the whole batch of issues. When you really get in that infrastructure, that's the real challenge for electric buses. It's not the vehicles themselves as much.
Thanks. Barbara?
Chip, a audience question did come in. But first, Kevin, I want to extend a compliment to you because I heard a presentation several months ago. I'm on the RPA New Jersey committee, and Jeannie Kwan was one of the presenters. And there were several other people from your team, and I was so impressed by the quality of the presentation, the clarity, and how they delivered. It reminded me of the early days. I knew New Jersey Transit back in the very early days of when it was formed, when it was a very ambitious and young organization, and it was really great to see that. It gave me hope that there really is going to be some different things happening. The audience question is, does NJT have any plans for the Blacktop Plaza in front of Newark Broad Street Station? travelers are now greeted by some random parked cars in the plaza. It really begs for cosmetic and commercial development.
Yes, I'd say one. Thank you about the compliment about Jeannie, and I think she came over from MTA Capital Construction. You look at the team of people who brought on. Rich Schaefer was the lead structural engineer. He's now our new chief engineer. He was HNDB. You touched on them earlier. Sorry to HNDB. We stole Rich, but he was their lead structural engineer who built up their practice. He put the 5-year capital plan. I mean, the caliber of people we're talking about here are world class. So it's not, you can like Kevin or hey Kevin, that's how are we getting the right kind of people overall to have that kind of energy? And even with these tough times, it's extremely exciting to be here. We're hiring for our capital projects, so thank you for recognizing that. As far as that plaza, I hate to say, for all the years I've been riding on the M&E for 20-something years, long before I ever thought I'd be here. And of course, when the Westinghouse building was torn down, I always thought that would have been nice. Ideally, there could have been an adaptive reuse, but I know the history there, but that is clearly suboptimal, and we're looking to work with there are specific real estate developments, what's going on over at the stadium, and we're looking with other developers, and how do we do that in a way that preserves public space, et cetera. Also, there's infrastructure issues related to that, but where we can really make that as another sort of another gateway into Newark that has been historically. The station itself is beautiful. Did a really good renovation program a number of years ago. Is how do we do that as those surrounding sites are developed, and we're certainly in touch with the developers on that, and we would want that our front lawn there to be more than just blacktop. Yes.
Well, we're up against the hour, Kevin, and we really thank you very much for sharing with us today. And we're really as you know, very committed to being advocates for New Jersey Transit. It's an extraordinarily important agency, certainly for those stakeholders in Newark, but for the entire state. It helps to make us more competitive, helps to make us cleaner and greener. And we certainly want to see the progress that you've been able to with the governor's help and with your employees' help too. I did testify at a hearing that became somewhat infamous hearing going back a few months ago. And during that hearing, I was heartened by the employees of New Jersey Transit, your conductors, your engineers, bus drivers, who talked about the better feeling they had about the agency being on the right track, finally getting the support it needs financially. I mean, you can always use more support, but finally getting some financial resources and certainly having leadership at the top to help bring the agency forward. So your employees recognize it. We recognize it as well, and look forward to continuing to support New Jersey Transit in all that it does for the state of New Jersey.
Very, very kind, Chip, and very much appreciated. We know we're accountable. So, and it's been like baseball. You're only as good as your last at bat. So, the whole team here feels it. But there is a real sense of excitement. We know we have a long way to go, but and getting support from groups like the partnership is so important, because you're always going to have the clickbait photo of a seat that's torn, or somebody put something up on social media, and that comes, every transit agency has that comes with territory. But to have the real responsible leaders, business and community leaders, civic leaders, to be saying no, tweak a few things, yes, but in fact it's really important that kind of support that you all have provided is really the quality kind of support that we very much appreciate and need.
All right. Thanks again to our sponsors too, and to your team, Kevin, as well as Maya Curry on our team. Chip, I'll let you close out.
Yep. We hope everybody gets back to work, gets back and forth to work. Everybody stays safe. We look forward to seeing you all at one of our events very soon. We've got plenty of them. Check out our website. And we'll see you very soon. Thanks again, everybody.
Thank
you. Take care. Bye, Barbara.
Bye. Bye.